We hear a lot about funding gaps and investment hurdles in Africa, but we rarely stop to look at the mechanics of the bridge itself. Our guest today is an architect of those very systems. Niloufar Gharavi is the founder of Euro Nordic Funding Alliance. She just spent 2 weeks on the ground in Kigali, scouting for Rwanda's next hidden gems. She brings a rare edge to the boardroom, a high-precision logic forged on professional racetracks, where split-second decisions are the difference between winning and losing. Today, she's applying that same design-driven mindset to help Rwandan startups to go the distance from digital infrastructure to public services and beyond. So, Nilu, welcome to the program. How are you doing?
I'm good. A little bit tired after back-to-back meetings, but with positive progress, so I'm very happy.
You have been in Kigali for, you told me, 2 weeks?
Almost 2 weeks, yeah.
How do you find the country? What was your first impression?
I love it. Kigali is a very beautiful city. I hope that it remains this intact and not end up with having like tall buildings all over it, because it's just so charming the way it is.
All right. So I would like you to start by introducing yourself and your organization, which is the Euro Nordic Funding Alliance.
Yes, ENFA.
Please.
So yeah, I'm Niloufar Gharavi. Everyone calls me Nilu, as you also did. I'm originally from Iran and by choice Norwegian as well, so Persian Norwegian. By profession, I'm a systemic designer. I've been an architect in my life, designer, worked with products. But then my profession is to look into systemic value chains. So if you have a phone in your hand, that phone is not just a product, it's actually a system. So we as systemic designers look into that. And yeah, I've done a lot of projects in multiple different industries, come from a business family, built the first business when I was 16, and ever since just continued non-stop, in fact. So.
Impressive. So what was the vision behind starting ENFA, and how far have you come? You told me you are in 20 countries. What kind of impact are you seeing?
So the starting point wasn't like a mission that came to life overnight. It was a gradual progression of a lot of other projects. So, you know, I've been into business for long. Did a lot of different also humanitarian projects that were enabled through public grants. Then I worked with the startups, worked with fundraising for them, so I got to learn about venture capital investments. We also participated in larger investments, so I got to learn about private equity investments and the different environments around that. And over time, in all of these different environments of financing and project development and innovation, and technology development, I saw a lot of big gaps that existed within their own kind of value chains, but at the same time cross. And ENFA gradually came to life with the idea of bringing these type of players together and then facilitating them in cross-border business development and blended financing. So it is a systemic design project that has got shaped gradually from 3 years ago. And now, as you said, we are in 21 countries.
All right. And how long have you been operating in Rwanda?
In Rwanda for almost a year, not necessarily as a legal entity, because at the beginning we didn't want ENFA to be yet another corporate, yet another heavy agency. So we started with partnerships in most of the countries where we existed, because we wanted to get to know the markets, you know, find the right local partners. So we've been operating in Rwanda for almost a year, and now this week we're actually establishing a legal entity to function legally as well.
So having operated here for the past year, what kind of impact are you seeing in terms of funding startups, innovators, and what sort of opportunities are you seeing in the market?
Yeah. So we started small here in Rwanda, one by one. So our managing director and relationship manager here is Regina. She is a very well-connected business developer person. She also has worked in the in the Development Bank of Rwanda for 14 years. So just like her, in all the other countries we have presence. But here in Rwanda, she had a very pragmatic process, which I loved very much. She started utilizing her own network of entrepreneurs. So we started having this lady who single-handedly built one of the most successful honey productions here in Rwanda. She was one of our first members. And then we look into what type of advice we can give her, what type of training, what type of access to financing we can give her. So recently, all those kind of members, now approximately 7-8 of them during these past few months, they have been engaged into public grants in multiple projects that are designed based on their value chains. As part of those grants applications for EU Commission, they have partners in Europe right now that they can say, we have compatible companies in Europe that are our partners. We're connecting them to each other, to learn from each other, to share their value chain. And then these grant applications are going to gradually, come to life as well as financing and funding. And in the meantime, we're introducing them to philanthropy funds that we have access to, and putting them into some larger projects that could have larger scale financing for their scale up as well. And in this particular honey value chain that I mentioned, there are 2 actually ladies now that have joined in the same. They didn't know each other before they joined us, so they met through us for the first time, although they have been operating in the same market here in Rwanda for years. And we have managed to let them know each other, and then hopefully coming together to increase the capacity of their production. And we're working on bringing them to the luxury French market, for example, together with one of our advisors in France and the team over there in Paris. So now we need to advise them on, branding, market development, and all of those. So we're not like, just introductory brokers. I really don't like that type of relationship. So we actually become their partners. They join us, we give them the right advice, the right network, but they are also very, proactive people. We don't want to just have people that sit aside for us to tell them what to do and just, pour money in them. That's not how it works. We become partners, development partners together to grow. So far in Rwanda, it's been incredible. I really, really love the spirit, the entrepreneurship and business spirit that I have been witnessing. And I'm also very happy to see that how they appreciate the progress they have had. Money doesn't come. Fundraising is one of the hardest jobs on the planet. And everyone that has done it even one time in their life, they know it. And they also know that fundraising for $50 million is much easier fundraising for $5 million, in fact.
Yeah.
So they come with us, they join us in this journey, and we give them everything that we have within our network to accelerate that for them. And they appreciate the progress, which I really like.
Yeah, that is great. And before we even get into, deeper about, your plans and your operations here in Rwanda, tell us what, motivated you to think about moving your operations also to Rwanda among the over 20 countries that you are operating in?
Rwanda has very good representatives across Europe and the Nordics. So obviously, our local partners here, the first introductory was through Jean Bosco, one of our managing directors that is based in Sweden. He introduced us to more local partners here. So he was always talking very positively about Rwanda, and we were in the process of expanding our reach into the African market. We started with Kenya, Ethiopia, and Rwanda really came across as a bold country, where a lot of fundamental elements for finance structuring and project development was in place through the government, through the local players. So we felt that it's a very good base to give it a go, and now I see that it is definitely ago, and we're expanding very fast. We met with your banks, we are meeting with your different funds, with your different SMEs, and everyone is very eager to join on this mission with us.
Yeah. You told me that you have a plan to now, having operated here for 1 year, you want to go now the legal process,
Yes,
so that you can start a company here. Tell us about those plans.
I mean, it was actually advised by your authorities that, hey, you have been operating here for a while, why not become a legal entity that does financial advisory to the locals, and also because the authorities, they have seen the track record of the influence we have had here, they were like, they wanted to give us the mandate to represent them in the international investment forums that we go. So that gives us also, from the Rwandan side, a little bit of more solid base to become the advocate of the countries in the international forums that we go. So that's essentially that. But at the same time, I see that it does make a difference when companies and partners know that we are legally established here. We become Rwandan, you know, and maybe even I can be approached like a, I don't know, like a semi-Rwandan. It makes us feel also more local here.
Yeah, I see. That's very interesting. You are also a pro-design-driven entrepreneurship.
Yes.
How do you bring that philosophy here and ensure that companies don't just access funding, but are built to last?
Yes, so last December in 2025, I launched and published a book called Save the World Before Breakfast, which is the introduction to design-driven entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And through and everything that we have been doing is designerly. But let me explain it to answer to your question. So designers have this way of looking at the world from scratch. You know, we know, because we have been educated in that way, we know that this chair, this building, this phone, and everything, all the lifestyles that we live in, they did not exist. They're all by design, gradually over time. So we don't take it for granted that the things that are around us, they should be like this. So the moment that you open your eyes to the possibility that everything can be redesigned, that is when subject matters like real sustainability and regeneration can happen. So we brought that mindset into all the infrastructure of our own entity as ENFA. Like, we have a code of conduct and mandate. Our under establishment holding in Luxembourg is going to be one of the advocates of regenerative and fair share commons that are design driven. And we also train our members based on that, to have fresh eyes to the world, really.
And following the Rwanda Nordic Baltic Business Forum that concluded recently, what sort of sectors have you seen here in Rwanda that are ready to access your funding?
So first of all, I have to thank Ambassador Diane and her team that have organized that. We also tried our best to bring good quality companies from the Nordic and also locals here. They really gave us a very good stage to present what we have done. We actually had this keynote where we were able to bring our members on the stage. They presented themselves, and it was incredible to see how they talked about ENFA from their experience. I was so grateful to witness that. But out of that forum, and also all the other kind of meetings that we have had the last few days and weeks here, is that obviously construction market, affordable housing, building roof over people's head is one of the most important priorities of the government that we believe we can help with bringing a state-of-art prefab factory to the country that could support with the affordable housing mandate. And we're working on developing this cooperative to bring a lot of your developers together into a very good deal, so even the private sector would be boosted based on this new technology. We have this state-of-art health tech project to build 50-bed clinics all across the country. That is a very beautiful combination of program, training, equipment, building, that is going to enable access to health to a lot of remote areas of the country as well. Another industry is obviously agriculture. Like today we had a meeting with 22 SMEs that most of them are in agriculture. It was beautiful to hear their thoughts and their needs. So digitizing agriculture, helping them with exporting and opening to new markets is one of our priorities. We also today had a meeting with the Rwanda Development Board, and they have a very great focus on supporting SMEs, so we will be working with them to create some instruments of financing locally, and then that would attract international finance as well. So so I would say construction, agriculture, health are very important for the moment.
And how do you approach the process? Having SMEs here is one thing. So what do you look for, before you proceed to secure funding for such entities?
Yes. So we facilitate financing for through 5 brackets of financing. The minimum brackets is like between perhaps 500,000 euros to a little bit above that, and then it goes on to like towards like 10 million to $50 million. Some projects even more, depending on the source of financing we can enable. Now, for the large project, it's really important to have bankability. To have, for example, development bank coming in with their own instruments, debt, guarantees. It's very important to have the right agreements with the government in place to showcase to our international investors that the projects are secured. But above all of that, something that I have been talking about all the time in these forums here in Rwanda was that the international investors need to see that the Rwandans are ready to put equity and to show them that we have what it takes for our projects to succeed. Because so far, what the international investors have seen on a majority level from the African market has been that we sit, we give you land, we give you assets, you come and you develop. In my eyes, that is how some players come in and take advantage of such approach. While we say, if you want international investors to trust you, to come and put their money into your development, first you need to see that you are putting your money into your development. So we have this mechanism of like, if you bring in 20-30% investment into the deal from local investors, banks, and enable that project to begin, we're potentially ready to bring the rest from our financing partners. So they need to see the act for international investors to come in. So these are important criteria.
Yeah. And moving on, Nordic countries are big on green technology. What sort of specific hidden gems in Rwanda have you discovered here that members from the Nordic community or countries could be interested in?
Absolutely. So, for example, one of the projects that have came to our attention is the development of Lake Victoria project. Lake Victoria has pressured gas underneath, is volcanic, and to an extent that is even explosive and dangerous for the local areas. And I have myself, just looking into the map, I've seen beautiful resorts and things happening around it. So that project itself is incredible to tap into, to see that how that pressured gas could be utilized for providing electricity, and not just for the local surroundings of the lake, but rather even for the local countries and Rwanda. Obviously, that particular project has some complications around it, but to just give you an example of what we have spotted. Also, a lot of players here in Rwanda came to us. They have projects such as waste to energy that they want to implement. They even have investments from abroad that they want to put in, but they need to make sure that the governments or any other kind of local players, they would be the buyer of the energy that they do. And I know that for sure that if we manage to construct the projects in a way that the right actors are in place, the structure of financing is in place, the right guarantees, the right players, the right means for investments are in place, For example, international institutions from Nordics would be very much interested to come in.
Great, and there's also big projects at Lake Kivu that you might also be interested in.
Yes, of course. So we'll have to see. There's a little bit of complications about that project, we know. So we have to see if how it goes. But there are a lot of them. I mean, solar, other possibilities, renewable energy, or data centers, for example. I know there's a small data center being developed already. Under production. It could be a great possibility. We know one Swedish company that is very much interested to come in with full financing for building a data center here in Rwanda.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great opportunities.
Great. I see you are very interested in the private sector. So what kind of opportunities do you see in the public service that you could tap into?
In the public service?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very impressed with how the public service feels responsible towards supporting the local entrepreneurs. It's very important. Even in Nordic countries nowadays, we're struggling. I wouldn't say which countries and how Nordics, they know it, but we're in fact struggling with not seeing the similar means of support from the public sector towards the private sector. So I'm very impressed. We have had meetings, how passionate the public sector players are about supporting the private sector. Now, when it comes to projects that would require, for example, education, public sector, schools, I mean, those are some things that we could have a look at as well. But then the government needs to come in as a client for the technologies that bring in. One thing I should add is that one of our focus areas is to bring in general to the African market, bring in those amazing know-how and technologies that have been developed across the Nordics and Europe the last decades. You know, the results of all these Horizon Europe projects, research institutions, university collaborations. We want to commercialize those know-how and projects and technology into emerging markets. Africa doesn't need to invent the wheel and invest as much into R&D while Europeans are ready to do it. So that's one of the things that public sector could potentially support.
So I would also want you to highlight some of the hurdles you see or some of the challenges you see local SMEs who are trying to access grants from the European market, you know, and how can ENFA support them, you know, to, you know, increase, you know, their success?
Yeah, yeah. So Africa and Rwanda, just like any other African countries, have been under the support and influence of USAID for a very long time. That has no longer been in place since last year, right? Or even before that. Now, Europe has had a lot of programs that engages partnership between European entities and non-European entities, including Africans. So those programs are very important to tap into. And the biggest gap that the local SMEs have is actually knowledge, being aware of them. And that's the first thing that we give them. The moment that they join our network through a very simple membership, we give them trainings. The first training they get is introduction to public grants through European Commission. There's also introductions to philanthropy, which is very important because there are a lot of great philanthropy funds that could be interested into putting down money, or even a lot of private equity funds. They may have a philanthropy side, but they don't know where to put, how to enable those access. At the same time, you mentioned grants in particular, but it's also important that we don't continue developing grantpreneurs, which I see is a very big kind of concern of the Rwandan authorities, and I totally understand, because you turn entrepreneurs and SMEs into money getters than money makers, you know? Non-dilutive funding, that's the biggest dilemma with it. You learn how to get money, but you don't practice to develop your business in a way that it generates money. And that's one of the biggest difference between grant funding and investment funding. Investors, they come and demand you to tell them how you're going to generate money. So what is important to me, again, in answer to your question, although it was specifically about grants, is that we're not going to just bring grants. It's a combination of different type of funds based on projects, based on player, based on the ticket, and also based on the interest from the fund donors of any kind. Yeah.
Interesting. You have also, created a successful network of more than 20 countries. Are there successful models you have seen in other countries that you could replicate here in Kigali?
Yes. For example, our base in Cyprus is very, very strong. I'm really glad for the partners we have there, Theo and his team. I mean, Cyprus is a fantastic hub for entering Europe. And that's actually one of the things that we want to do for African entities to access to the European markets through Cyprus. Also, it brings in partially the Gulf market as well. Now, I see Rwanda playing the same function as a hub. It does, of course, mean challenging the tax incentives or something, but Rwanda is this kind of relatively smaller country compared to the neighboring countries across, except Burundi, of course. But it has a very interesting location. It's not very far from West, it's part of East still, and it does have a very good level of rule of law and regulatory function that Europeans may look into, or even Gulf region may look into. So Rwanda is not far to become this hub where a lot of technologies and investments could come and then be navigated to the rest of the African countries.
Yeah.
So I see these two to be compatible.
You told me you are a former rally driver, and I also know you worked in the creative agency. So how does that mindset of making split-second decisions influence how you vet for projects while working for ENFA?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Yeah, I come from that background. It's always been my, my hobby, profession, or something. First of all, it demands you to think fast and not, especially because time is very expensive when you're doing investments, or when you're doing anything, but also in particular when you're doing investments, because it engages also very expensive people, from a financial sector, from authority and all of that. And many SMEs, many companies can't really afford that. So it's very important to make very efficient decisions. And I think, having been a race car driver, having come from a country like Iran, which is now going through a lot of issues, or has always been, we learn to be more challenge friendly, you would say. So we don't say no to challenges when they come in, or to things that are not as comfortable as they should be, for example. I see a lot of my European friends. I don't want to stamp them by saying they are risk averse. No, many of them are actually they do educated risk. It's very different, very important difference. But at the same time, there are challenges in contexts that are growing, like across Africa, that if they are a little bit more accustomed to dealing with it, they would have a different approach. So I would say that my racing background, my nationality background from Iran's time, or even my lifestyle, like having lived in different countries, having done a lot of projects, it has given me and also my colleagues, I also pick people that are challenge friendly, and they have worked in environments that needs them to, as you said, make split-second decisions, or at least fast decisions. So it's a culture within our organization, actually.
Yeah.
And it's also very important to be international mindset. One of the things that I really dislike about how we sometimes approach the world is that we just end up being tourists. Again, a lot of my European friends, they have mostly, their relation to Africa is safari. and coming in, spending a nice week, being impressed with the nature, and then going back to the natural life, and judging the nation or the cities by what they just see in front of their eyes. That is something that I would advise them to change, because the moment they go behind the surface, they see all the potentials that we see. And now, even in Kigali, they don't even they don't even need to go behind the surface to see it. I mean, Kigali is an incredible city with incredible infrastructure. I'm so impressed how good it is. So they just honestly have to come and see it. So we come and we do and we see and we take that risk. And then we go back and we show them, hey guys, we did it. Why not you come and do it? But we also need help from the locals to safeguard us, because we just jump into the ocean. It's hard to do it alone.
Indeed. And just coming from, we just completed the safari rally in Kenya recently.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in entrepreneurship, starting out as a racing driver? For somebody who is wondering, walk us through that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a business family. We're like 5 generations of entrepreneurs. I touch upon it a little bit in my book because it's my background and where I come from. So my grandfather was one of the most successful grocery retailers in Iran before the Shah time, and his business got downscaled to an extent that it was almost bankrupt due to the revolution. And that was a big learning and kick towards the rest of the family to reinvest, to grow, to revitalize the wealth. And I grew up with the stories of that. Before my grandfather when he was almost in his deathbed, he started writing his business memoir. And towards the end, he couldn't write anymore because his hands were swallowed. So I was writing for him. And that was my first and ever MBA one-on-one. So I come from this. I can't help it. I worked in the largest bank of Norway, DNB, for almost 5 years. And I was completely a misfit, because when I got hired in DNB, I was almost the first employee in my family history. Not that it's anything odd or different or whatever, but I just didn't know how to live like that. And I'm really grateful to my managers in DNB or elsewhere that helped me to find myself in that setting. But when I left it, I knew that it was a good kind of process to get more established in Norway. But then I was always meant to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And also your design background.
Yeah.
How does it help you? How does it influence how you do your everyday job?
So when we briefly touched upon it a little bit before, I mean, design background is primarily the mindset. It's very important. As a designer, you get to learn a lot of different toolkits to develop products or processes or systems, but beyond all of that is your mindset, is how you see the world. Nothing in your world is taken for granted. The public transport system, it could have not existed if it wasn't because of a seamless design, service design, product design, system design, all the combination, urban design. So we always have this fresh eye to the world that helps us to come up with solutions no matter what. Complexities are especially for systemic designers, which is my profession, complexity is our thing. We love it. We deal with it, we map it, we untangle it. It doesn't scare us. So that is obviously incredibly helpful. And one thing also really helped me to establish ENFA the way it is, together with my colleagues, is that I used to be an architect, so my bachelor is an architect, and then I was a designer, and then I was a systemic designer by profession. The business was always the blood, you could say. But as an architect, I finished my bachelor degree with a 3-hectare project. It was huge, creativity center. 2 months after, I was in Norway studying design, which was the reason I moved to Norway from Iran. And they gave us a challenge to design a toothbrush.
Wow.
So from a huge building and plot project, an urban project, you suddenly have to think of a toothbrush. That blew up my mind, but it also gave me the ability to move in between scales. Macro scale, micro scale, different ones. And that is incredibly important in business, because that gives you the ability to always see through different aspects of one business. To close my remarks with a very tangible example, these honey ladies, I refer back to them. You know, their business is honey, right? It's very straightforward. They want to have a new market. Well, that's okay. We will help with that. Well, we managed to engage them into a project for the public funding that requires education. It is an educational program for, you know, for women and female. And why we did that? Because these ladies, they hire a lot of women as part of their, you know, processes. So we basically are bringing funding to one part of their business, and that would already enable them to hire more people to educate their labor, and that will already help with increasing their production and access to the market and possibility for growth. So if I was just a straightforward MBA person, you know, no offense to MBAs, but if I was just, you know, looking at my business like this, I would have said, okay, they're honey, they need market, okay, introduction to a potential partner there. But business always is a system. It always has different aspects. So we were able to unlock different aspects of their business and bring opportunities of blended financing to each of them. And that's one of the biggest advantages of ENFA. We see things.
Wow, that's really amazing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, talking about funding, how much have you, over the past year, how much have you managed to bring to Rwanda?
So we have the applications, for example, that we submitted. Each of them are approximately 400,000 euros for each of these partners and members. So those are like for small businesses. And now that, and I would say that it took us, you know, all this time, it took us more time to establish ourselves here, to get the trust, to onboard these few entrepreneurs to trust us. We also gave them a lot of training throughout the process. So these financing are coming in through that. So 400,000 here, 400,000 there, $1 million there. So not very big amounts, but it also gives us the process to now come and bring the few projects, for example, that I mentioned to you, that each of them are going to be a minimum of $15 million or more, that we're trying to structure both from international investors and also local companies that are interested.
Interesting. And as we almost come to the end of this interview, you know, what sort of partnerships do you need, you know, for you to scale up further and even attract more investments to Rwanda?
We actually have had really good meetings already with your local authorities and entities here. We really need the banks to come in and show their hands, per se, right? Because investment is a little bit like a poker game. They need to come and say that, okay, if your investor is biased, if your investor can't really take the full risk to come, because one thing that is very important is that everyone, no matter where they are looking for co-investments. It's very important. Although there are some funds that they would prefer to go all in, to have full control over the case, but there are majority they want to co-invest. So it means the local authorities and the banks need to partner with us in order for us to develop the right instruments or kind of help us to better introduce the current instruments they have towards the international investors that we have. It's very important. To be very honest with you, there are international investors. I just come from Vienna. There are some of them that they said, Nilu, just send me an email with your projects. They are ready to look into it. It doesn't mean that they are ready to put in money, but they are ready to look into it, and that's already extremely important. And that's a very important role that ENFA plays, because one company or one event can come and say, we have a database of 5,000 investors. Everybody says that. We have a database of 10,000, 5,000, 8,000 investors. But we have that database, including 300 investors that pick up our phone when we call. or check our email when we send a case. That's a very important, anyone that has done fundraising knows how important that is, relationship. And that's what we enable. So the same relationship that we have abroad, we also would like to have it here. So they look at the investments we provide, the cases we put together, their SMEs. So for example, if there are local SMEs that join our network, we want the local authorities to have an eye on them, to support them, because with their support is that we can bring the international support as well.
Nilu, as we come to the end of this interview, looking ahead for Rwanda, what are your immediate and future plans?
So immediately, I'm really grateful to Norskin House Kigali that are letting us to do this interview here, and also we're becoming partners with them, and we will be having events on Friday together before I leave for their local community of investors, of startups, and we will be inviting more SMEs. The ambassador of Sweden is going to open the events, so that's like an immediate activity. We kind of we came for an event and we're leaving with an event that we initiated ourselves. That's how we operate. We've had a lot of constructive meetings that will definitely have follow-ups to make very concrete, tangible instruments for financing, for support, and everything we talked about. Those are like medium plans that we're developing with the authorities. And then in a long-term plan, we really, I'm not a big fan of giving KPIs right now, but I see Rwanda to be this hub for a lot of entrepreneurs to soft land, a lot of technologies, and then get distributed across Africa. So I want that to happen because I see it, and I think a lot of other African countries would be welcoming to that as well. So I see Rwanda as one of our most important hubs in Africa, and not just because of Rwanda itself, but also because of our managing director here, Regina. She's been incredible, and she's like the best representative of Rwanda's entrepreneurial spirit in my eyes, and I see it in all the other entrepreneurs we met as well. So as I said, we do the facilitation and the support. We're becoming a fund, so we will also do some investments ourselves, but we do the facilitation. The rest is with them, with the local teams and local authorities. And I see the context here be very ready for what we can hopefully bring in.
So thank you so much, Nilu, for your time. We wish you all the best in your profession.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, to our viewers, that was our time here at Norsken. We thank you so much for your time. We hope you found this conversation insightful. Keep it going on social media, and please remember to follow us on all across our social media platforms, igihe.com. And also remember to check out on enfa.org on their website and get to learn more about what they do. Thank you and have a nice time.